everyone, I'm Rebecca and welcome back to my sewing room. It's December and like every good girl who doesn't participate in organized religion, I have fully embraced the Christmas spirit. My house is lit up like the World's Fair, my radio is set to the Christmas station except when they play Last Christmas, aka the worst song ever known to man, and I'm wearing Christmas sweaters every day. So what does one do when one wants all of the Christmas things all the time? Make a Christmas dress! I love going through all of the Christmas fabrics at Joann's every year, and this year, since I'm on a huge plaid kick right now, I picked out a couple of Christmas plaids from the quilting cotton section to make some new wardrobe pieces. One will be a skirt, which will come later, and the other a vintage style Christmas dress. I'm going to be using Butterick 5556, or at least attempting to. When I picked out this fabric, I didn't know what pattern I would be using and therefore got the amount of yardage that I thought I would need for a vintage style dress, having made several vintage style dresses before. Then, without looking at the yardage requirements, I picked out this pattern from my stash. Naturally, the yardage requirements for this pattern are far more than the yardage that I purchased, so I'm going to be attempting to make this 7 yards of fabric dress out of 6 yards of fabric, which is cut in 2 pieces. Oh, and it's plaid. Good luck to me. Anyway, let's get started and see what on earth I can do with this pattern yardage dilemma. I've already cut out the pattern pieces, so let's go ahead and make a mock-up of the bodice. So I do apologize because I realized that I went through the entire mock-up phase of this, which wasn't really a mock-up, but I'll get to that in a second, and didn't film any of it. So sorry, but I want to tell you a little bit about what I did with the mock-up because I didn't really do a full mock-up, which I probably should have considering I don't have a lot of this fabric. But what I did was I took the pattern first, which the pattern is just 2 pieces for the bodice because it's a dolman sleeve. So it's 1 front, 1 back, and then, you know, obviously repeat on the other side. And I took that and pinned it together just like down the arm and down this seam here and put that on and kind of looked at where it came to. And from that, I realized that it was a fairly close fit. It definitely needed more length in the front and a little bit of length at the side. The length in the back looked good. And I could probably go up 1 size because this pattern size goes to a 22, and normally in patterns my measurements actually equal like a 24. For historical patterns I take that out because that's all just ease and I don't need that, but this is a 1950s pattern, so I feel like I want a tiny bit of ease, not much, but basically the size 22 bust measurement was my exact bust measurement, so decided I would go the next size up. So as I was cutting out my fabric, my mock-up fabric, I decided to cut out what would be the size 24, just sizing up to where the next line would be, and then also increasing that front and that side length just a little bit. 1 inch in the front, 1/2 inch in the side. And then I cut out my fabric. Now I decided to go ahead and just try doing this in my lining fabric. And I am using black sateen for my lining. I have a fair amount of black sateen, though it's in mostly smaller bits, but I decided I would just go ahead and try it because the pattern looked close enough, and to be honest, I'm really not sure how to do much changing with the dolman sleeve anyway, so I decided I would just go for it. So I did. I cut that out. First I just cut out 1 front, 1 back, and again I pinned it together, pulled it and tried it on, and it looked like it was right, so I cut out the other side. So now I am at the point where I am cutting out my actual fabric. As I mentioned before, my fabric is plaid, and I already don't have enough of this fabric, and it's in 2 cuts. And also dolman sleeves take up a ridiculous waste of fabric. Like, it's so bad. I don't know who invented the dolman sleeve, and I usually hate dolman sleeves and don't do them, but I was trying to do this pattern as is, hence keeping the dolman sleeve. But they are the biggest waste of fabric, and I really probably shouldn't have done that because basically you have your body like your normal pattern, but attached to it you have this big bias thing just sticking out in the middle of the bias of your yardage, making it so that you can't actually just fold the fabric and cut 2 at once. You have to like Tetris it and puzzle it. My fabric is a large repeat plaid, so that makes it really hard. Like, it's literally, I think, 8 inches or so in the repeat, so and it's only on 1 side of the fabric. It's not like yarn dyed or anything, it's just printed. So cutting this is going to be a nightmare to try to match these plaids. So I kind of want to show you where I'm at currently, where I've cut out one piece of the bodice, and we'll see where I go from there. Okay, so this is where I'm at currently. This is the fabric, and you can see that that repeat is really huge because not only is it plaid, but it's thick plaid, thin plaid, thick plaid. And same with on here, we've got the thick, thin, thick. So it's a huge, huge repeat. And I cut out my first piece just like in the corner of the yardage, and now I'm trying to figure out the best place where I can cut it out but not waste a ridiculous ton of yardage. So I have it here right now, but I only have this much left on this piece. This is the smaller piece of the two pieces of yardage, and I want to get all of my bodice pieces out of this, and I'm a little kind of thinking that might not happen because of how much this is taking to match this repeat. So I'm looking at my back pieces right now, and if I put it here, it seems to take up the least amount of yardage, but it is not only over the edge of the fabric, the selvage is printed. So like, even if I take out the seam allowance, I'm way past that at this point. So I am going to go take my dog on a walk before it gets dark and see if I can Tetris this maybe another way, because so I just kind of want to talk you through the process of where I found the best place to lay these out. And basically what I did after the last time that I talked with you was that I actually went ahead and cut out the front piece, one side of the front piece, because that way I could play with both of them at the same time and like puzzle them out to see where they would both fit together. And then what I did was I kind of just looked at the pattern repeats. So I was trying to see, okay, well, where is a wide stripe versus a narrow stripe, and where can I lay that out on the leftover fabric and like make sure that it works. And at first I was like, oh my gosh, this one works so great right up here in this corner, except that that freaking dolman sleeve winds up going off of the fabric over there where it's cut down. So that's a real shame. It would have been fantastic up over there, but it is not to be. So I mean, like, not economical at all, because as you can see, this is the middle of this piece of fabric, but they do at least both fit together in the same middle swath. And in fact, I didn't think that I cut them up top this way, but I must have, because they actually puzzle themselves right out. So you can see, like, literally this is where this goes together. And then there's the little gap there and the little gap there. So they meet together right here in the center. Hopefully I will be able to use the other bits of yardage. Either I'm going to have to piece the skirt somehow, which is entirely possible, or anything else in this pattern. I haven't even looked at what's required as far as like facings or, you know, anything like that. Probably should have. But I wanted to do the bodice first because honestly, I don't care that much about pattern matching on the skirt. It's not nearly as obvious as a big full skirt. But a big red plaid right across the front and or back of your bodice is like super crazy obvious if it's not pattern matched. So that's really what I'm doing here. I'm laying these down face down on the face up fabric and making sure that I get them to a point where they match exactly, both horizontally and vertically. So sometimes it takes a little like pulling the fabric to make sure that you have everything on grain and it's laying all flat. But now that I have found the place where these go, I'm going to shift this whole thing up so that it's all on the table and I can really like make sure it's all flat and nice and iron it smooth, make sure the grains match up. Because like, for example, right now, yes, it matches up here, but it doesn't match up over here. So I have to make sure that it's all everywhere, pin it in place, and then cut it out. And then I can continue with the assembly. Now, I haven't looked at the pattern instructions on this at all. My guess is it's going to have me like line, as in no exposed seams type line, the inside of the bodice, and I do not like that. That is not how I make things. So I'm going to ignore that and I'm going to flat line these pieces. And then if I need to do a facing for the neckline, I can do that. This, I believe, is a side zip where the centers are actually seams, by the way. I will still take a look at the pattern instructions first, just really see what they say, but that is my plan, to flatline these and get them all assembled. So I will check in with you later probably once I've begun the assembly. So there's a little issue with this area of the fabric, and that is, I'm sure you can tell, it's like super off grain somehow, which is not great when you're trying to match plaids. So I am going to basically kind of just pull and stretch this and see if I can get the grain to match, because I mean, all of the plaid is matching right now. It's just that the fabric grain is so off that it's just super rough and bubbly underneath. It's like totally doesn't make sense. So yeah, I'm gonna try and pull it kind of like on the bias and horizontally a little and see if I can get those to match, because otherwise I'm kind of screwed, because this is where it needed to be in the fabric. So, and this is where it makes sense to be in the fabric. It should work. It's just not working currently. So I will play around with that and use the iron to steam it into shape, see if I can get it to work. And if not, I will let you know and I'll figure something else out. Success! So it turns out that this fabric is actually way stretchier across the grain than I would have anticipated, considering I thought it was supposed to be quilting cotton. But with a combination of stretching it both across the grain and on the bias, I was actually able to get it to lay really quite nice and flat. There's no bubbles anywhere anymore. So now I can go ahead and cut this piece out and start assembling. I was able to use one of those offcuts to cut out things like the cuffs, the facing, and also the collar. So that was pretty great. Now, one thing to keep in mind if you're doing something like this with plaid, although I didn't worry about matching the collar because it's two pieces and then one will be interfaced, but one's going to be inside, so I didn't worry about that. Facings, both of them are going to be inside, so I didn't worry about matching them either. Oh, on the collar though, what I did think about was where I wanted the stripes to go. So I knew that I kind of wanted that gold sparkle stripe to be right in the center, so I did position that there. With the cuffs, however, I did think about the fact that I wanted both cuffs to match. You have to cut 4 for the cuffs because they're inside and outside. And so I have 2 here that are a matched set. And then I also have 2 here that are a matched set. I guess really I didn't have to do both of them matched, and they don't match each other, but they match here. And they're fairly close to each other as well. But I didn't have to really match one side probably, but then again, I did see a couple people who have made this dress and one person was wearing her cuffs flipped down. So that was like, well, if I ever want to wear my cuffs flipped down, then they have to match the insides as well. So that is what I did, but I was able to use one of those whole offcut pieces that was left from having to do the weird cutting of the bodice and cut all of these out of it. So that means the only other smaller pieces I have are the pockets. So there will be 4 pocket pieces, and then also the belt, which, I mean, belt's relatively easy and doesn't have to be a matching belt if it doesn't need to be. So that means that it's time to cut out the skirts, but that will be tomorrow because it's time to go to bed. So I realized something really stupid about this pattern, but that will probably be really awesome for me. And that is, look at this really stupid pattern layout on here. This pattern assumes that you are using directional fabric, which is funny considering I'm pretty sure both of the samples are made up in solids, but it assumes that you're using directional fabric. And so it is cutting these skirt panels with the biggest waste of fabric. Now, my plaid may be a plaid, but luckily it is not a directional plaid. Yes, it has a huge repeat, but it is the same top to bottom. So I am able to flip my pattern pieces multiple ways as long as they face the right way, because like the back of the fabric is not plaid. So as long as they face the right way, I am able to flip those pattern pieces around, which means that I can cut some of these pattern pieces upside down and squidge them together. I also actually have a little bit more fabric than I realized in this cut. It's just over 4.5 yards. So I don't think it'll be a problem to cut out those 8 pieces. Like, I think, fingers crossed, but I think I'm gonna be okay. So I'm excited to start cutting on those, even though, by the way, I am adding 4 inches to the bottom of each of those skirt pattern pieces. I'm tall. I want the skirt to be mid-calf. I'm adding 4 inches. But I still don't really think it'll be a problem. So now it is time to cut out all of those 8 skirt panels. By the way, I'm not matching plaids on the skirt panels except for the center front and maybe the center back. We'll see if I can. So I'm doing something that may potentially be stupid and cause me to run out of fabric, but I realized that I can't just not completely match plaids. And by that I mean, like, I can't let a red bit go into a middle of nothing. But on the flip side of that, I'm okay if a narrow goes to a wide. I kind of did a test where I like pulled the fabric back and did like a little fold and just looked at, you know, what would it look like if, etc. And so like this, for example, where a narrow goes to a wide and a wide goes to a narrow, that doesn't bother me that much. Like almost not at all. It hardly bothers me. But if on the flip side I did, this isn't gonna let me do this, but if I did like this kind of thing, oh, that bothers me a lot. Even just looking at it, it's like, oh, painful. So I am doing the potentially stupid thing where I'm going to attempt to match even the side bits. Now I know that it's even more complicated because of the fact that like this is actually on the bias. So they're not going to match exactly like from top to bottom. It's just not going to be the same because the pattern sizes aren't the same. But like how I have it right now, it's close. So it kind of starts at the bottom of this one, and by the time it gets down here, we're like at the top of this one, but like it's still in that realm. It's still close enough, and I don't think that's going to bother me, you know, when I have it close enough. So basically what I've done here is I have the skirt side pattern piece laid out, and I have put my 4-inch wide ruler at the bottom of it because I'm adding 4 inches to the length of all of these pieces. And this is the first side piece I'm cutting out. And by doing that, I can make sure that I'm not going to run off the end of the fabric. And then I'm laying out my front piece on top of that with the side that will match. So like this is the side that goes to the side front, and checking the pattern match. And like I've got this ruler over here because again I'm adding the 4 inches, but also like I mentioned with the bodice, I am sizing this up to a 24. So this is about a 1/2 inch that goes between each size. So I have my ruler over here set up so that it's a 1/2 inch off the pattern because this will be my new line. And then it's going 4 inches off the pattern down here to add that extra length. So I know that the corner of this piece is actually going to wind up here. That way I'm not going off the fabric. You know, I know where things are going. This one doesn't have to match it to anything yet, but when I cut out the next side piece, I will use this side to match it to that one because it's like reverse. So this side, because there's 2 side pieces on each side, this side will match to front and back, this side will match to the side. So that's what I'm doing, and by doing that, I'm not losing much length. If you saw when I flipped this up, basically this is the additional bit that I'm kind of losing by cutting this. So it's like barely 3/8 of an inch, I'd say, that I'm losing, you know, as far as length goes. So I hope that I have enough for all of this. This is gonna be scary doing this. And I'm obviously only cutting out the first side piece right now. I have 3 other side pieces to go, and I have 2 back pieces to go. And the back pieces, like the front pieces, those I'm matching actually. So this is the yardage remaining. Hopefully I can get all of my pieces cut out because I bought all that my store had, and I was at another Joann's like a week later. They didn't have any. I haven't called around other Joann's, but it seems unlikely. So gonna try and make this work. I am going to keep cutting, and I will probably spend the rest of the night just cutting these pieces, attempting to match them. So I have some hopefully just temporary bad news. I'm sure you all saw this coming. I've run out of fabric. This skirt really sucks yardage when you're trying to at least semi-match plaid. It just like the yardage disappears. I have enough fabric left at this point that I can get my back panels cut out. I have cut out 2 of the sides and both of the fronts, and then I can cut out both of the backs, and then that's all I can cut out in what I currently have. So I'm hoping that Joann's like online inventory of what's in local stores is correct, because it says that the Joann's that is like second closest to me has 3 yards, which would be totally plenty. And if that isn't correct, then the Joann's that is like second closest to my work, which is unfortunately 4th or 5th closest to me, like a good half hour away, that says that they have 5 yards. So naturally Joann's closed 40 minutes ago. So I will be calling them first thing tomorrow, putting it on hold assuming they have it, going and buying that fabric, coming home, throwing it in the wash, and then attempting to cut out the rest of the skirt. So I really hope that they have it at either of those Joann's, preferably the close one. That would be great. But yeah, it's a total, this just eats the fabric, even just like remotely trying to match, because the skirts are all freaking gored. Like there's no straight edges on anything. They're all, this dress better be fabulous. So I am going to probably continue cutting out the back piece, because again, I do have enough fabric that I can cut out the back pieces. And then I'm planning on lining this entire skirt with taffeta, because I just love that swoosh and body for a 1950s type dress. So I'm going to cut it all out in black taffeta, hoping that I have enough of that as well, but at least if I don't have enough black taffeta, that should be easy to find. And also it's wider width, so I should have enough, because that's really the issue here, is that the fabric is not wide and I'm trying to match the plaid, so it's like I can't even just sandwich it because the pieces are too wide for that. I know, you saw it coming, I saw it coming, we all saw it coming, we all knew I was going to run out of fabric. And I did. Anyway, I'm going to get back to work now. And to make matters worse, I just went to cut the back pieces and like lined up my side piece to it like I was showing you how to do before. Cut 3 out of 4 of the sides out, though the 4th one is already actually mostly cut anyway, because it was like on a diagonal edge, I guess, anyway. And then realized after all that had been cut out that I lined up the center back with the side piece, not the side back with the side piece. So that's great. I guess the lucky thing is that lining up the side back with the side piece, it's like within a ½ inch of where the stripe needs to go. So if it's a matter of like me matching the stripe or not, I guess I can always fudge it and just make it a tiny bit shorter there, or make the hem less deep or whatever, because the hem's like a 1 inch deep hem, I think, on this. So yeah, that was, whoops, great. I found more fabric! Yay! So the fabric store that I mentioned that is like the second closest one to me, they had 3 yards of the fabric, and I decided that just so that I wouldn't have any sort of headache or anything, I would just get all of it, because that way I could get home, throw it in the washing machine and the dryer, and make sure that I could find the place on the fabric to have that match. And I did wind up with excess, probably close to a yard excess. I mean, my skirt panels are like, I think just about exactly 36 inches. So I knew I would have extra, but it was worth it for that extra like couple of bucks to just not run out again. And now I also know that I have enough length that I can make the belt to match, because all of my pieces that I had before, none of them were actually long enough to make a belt running the length of the fabric. So I have now cut out my last 2 skirt panels, and everything is ready to get flat-lined all together. So that means that I'm going to take, for the skirt, each of the taffeta panels and the plaid cotton panels, lay them flat on each other, pin them all around the edges, and then just serge each of those panels. And the bodice, I'm doing the same thing, except the interior of the bodice is the cotton sateen instead of the cotton. Now this is a complete deviation from the instructions of this pattern. The pattern instructions are like bag lining everything, and I hate bag lining. I think it's like the worst thing in the world, unless you're doing maybe like a coat, I guess. So So I'm not doing that. I'm going to flatline everything. There's already facings as part of the pattern for the neckline, so like I shouldn't even have to worry about that bit, and anything else where it would wind up being bag lined like a sleeve edge or whatever, I can just do a tiny little hem and that's not a big deal. So that is my plan. I have a lot of serging in my future, and once things are serged, then I can start the assembly. Oh, one of the other things that I am changing from this pattern is that the pattern for some reason has you cut out one pocket and it's a lined pocket. And that doesn't make any sense. So I am doing 2 pockets. I think the reason that it's having you do 1 pocket is to alleviate the fact of like having a pocket in a zipper seam. But I've done other dresses and skirts with pockets on zipper seams. They're annoying, but they're not that bad. So that is what I'm doing here. I am going to do 2 pockets, 1 on each side because duh, and I'm going to put the zipper seam in there as well. I've cut those all out too. So yeah, I think I will just be back to you once probably the skirt panels are going together and I get to something that's maybe like a little bit trickier, like the pockets and or the bodice, and I'll show you what I'm doing that's funky on this dolman sleeved bodice. So I have flatlined everything and I've decided that I want to work on the bodice first. So what I've done is I've gone ahead and I've done the darts in the bodice. So bodice front and back, each side has a dart. And then the funky thing is that the sleeve actually has 3 tiny darts near the elbow. I'll show you the inside because I think that'll show up a little bit better. 3 tiny darts near the elbow. So I'm not really sure why. I guess it's for the bend of the elbow in these dolman sleeves, but definitely weird. And now that I've done all of the darts, I can go ahead and put the bodice together. Now, normally in a historical type piece, I will wait until the pieces are together to do the darts at all, but I'm really not familiar with the construction on these dolman type pieces. So I've decided to go ahead, put the darts first, then put the pieces together and then see if I need to adjust the darts, which, let's be honest, I probably will because I usually do, but I decided I just wanted to see what that turns out with first to begin with. So now I can go ahead and sew them together, and while I'm at it, I'm probably going to start sewing the skirt panels together as well. Well, I have to call it a night early tonight, unfortunately, because I have to wake up early tomorrow to do something fun, but the bodice is all together. And look at those matched plaids. Very excited about the matched plaid. I realized I did not pay any attention to when I was cutting it to match the plaid on the arm, but that would have been really challenging anyway, so oh well, there's that. And then the skirts, I have put together so far the 2 back panels as well as the 2 side panels on this side, including the side pocket. On this side, it will be the pocket with the zipper because I find it easier to do up a side zip on my right hand side. And so what I've done is I've put the pocket, the 2 pocket sides, onto the front side panel. And I went into this in a lot more detail, I believe, in my strawberry dress video. So I will link that up above if that's something that you want to go check out, because I know I'm not going into any detail here, but basically when you do a pocket with a zipper at the same time, you put your pocket on the front hand side of the skirt like you normally would, and then instead of attaching the back part of that pocket to the back part of the skirt, you attach the pockets together, and then you put it in and act as one piece for your zipper, making sure not to sew your pocket shut. So that's all I'm saying now, but yeah, if you want to see that in more detail, go check out the strawberry dress video. But this will be it for tonight and for tomorrow because I am doing that fun thing all day. I mean, I guess I can tell you what it is. We're gonna go have Christmas fun history bounding shenanigans in Leavenworth, Washington, which is a cute Bavarian town up in the mountains. The whole town is like all Bavarian themed, and it's supposed to snow tomorrow, so I'm really hopeful. But I'm excited where I am for now. I have not tried on the bodice yet. Hopefully it fits. That will be something to do when I have a little bit more time, but I wanted to get the rest of the skirt panels together first, so when I come back to the project, that's what I'll be doing first. I'll be putting together skirt panels, and then I will be trying on the bodice because then the skirt panels have to get attached to the bodice. So I will see you soon. All of my skirt seams are now together. My plaids are matched as well as they can be, and I want to show you a secret about my plaid matching. That's part of the secret. And that's part of the secret. I thought I cut these plaids to match. They seemed like they were matching before, but somehow they weren't quite matching. Hence the little bit here, and hence the little bit here. But I really wanted them to match, so I just squidged the pieces so that the bottom and top don't line up anymore. And I'll fix that when I do the hem and when I attach it to the bodice, because doesn't this look pretty when it's all nicely matched? Now, I think I mentioned it before, but I just didn't have enough fabric to do an exact match, and I decided that doing a similar match was going to be better on my brain than doing not a match at all. So unfortunately, of course, these are the side front seams, and this is where the similar match is, and all of the other seams except the two side fronts are matched perfectly, and these are not quite, but I still think that they're passable enough that they don't like hurt my soul. So I call it a win, and it means that I didn't need like 2 additional yards of fabric. So I was rather nervous about trying on the bodice because I didn't actually do like the actual mock-up. I just pinned it together and saw it if it worked. But I think it's actually almost perfect, even with like the darts, doing just the darts that were on the pattern. I don't know how this happened, but like it fits really exactly how I would want it by just pinching out that side seam. The only thing that I think needs a little tweaking is it's a little long in the back. So I do need to take up the back a little bit because the seam should be right here where my finger is, and obviously that's way more than the seam allowance. So I am going to mark that spot, but everything else seems really right. The one thing is, and I know it's probably just that it's a dolman sleeve thing, but like there's no range of motion. Dolman sleeves, why? Yeah, I know that's just a thing because you basically have wings underneath that are connected all the way to your waist. 1950s. Why did you do this? But I am super happy with the fit, so I'm just going to take up the back that little bit where it needs to go and go ahead and start doing collar and skirt and all of the other stuff that goes with the bodice. So I was trying to get in a bit more of the dress done before I had to go to bed, but I was supposed to be in bed like a half hour ago, and what I've done is not much, and part of it doesn't even count as anything. And that is because I gathered the skirt waistband, or gathered the skirt to what would be the waist, but apparently this fabric wins over the thread. So I did my 2 rows of gathering stitches, which normally are fine, but the taffeta in this doesn't want to gather, especially over the seams where it is 2 layers of taffeta and 2 layers of cotton, because every time I went over a seam and tried to pull up those gathering threads, those threads popped. So this is garbage right now. Well, the gathering threads are garbage. The skirt is great. So I guess tomorrow maybe I will pleat this skirt instead, or else I have to hand gather, which is annoying, but I suppose I could. I haven't had to hand gather in a long time, actually. The skirt is really fun. That said, like, look at this volume. It's gonna be a pain in the butt to hem, but it sure is fun, and I can't wait to twirl in this. It'll be really nice to twirl in. And then the only other thing that I did was I have done the collar, kind of. So I made up the collar. It's just pinned to the bodice right now, but the collar pieces are interfaced and all together. It turns out that I think this pattern actually called for sew-in interfacing, which too late. I cut it out of fusible interfacing because it's just easier. So I did put fusible interfacing on the part that will be against my neck because I prefer the outside, whatever's showing the most, to be like the smooth side, and interfacing tends to bubble. So that is what I did with the collar. And then the other thing that I'm not positive about, but I think that because this was designed to be bagged lined, I think for some reason it still has the facing on the front of the neckline, but I think it doesn't actually have facing on the back of the neckline. So I'll have to draft up a little pattern for that just to connect the 2 fronts. I'm not there yet because I haven't done the collar, but I think that will be the next step, is to put in the front facing. Hopefully I'll get a bit more of this done tomorrow, because my friend Emily and I have decided that we want to dress up all cute for a tea this Sunday that we are hosting in my dining room, but from our favorite tea room, the Secret Garden tea room. And so we will dress up all cute, and I want to wear my new Christmas dress that needs to be finished by then. So anyway, good night. I will see you tomorrow. I'm going to create the facing for the back of the neckline now, so I figured I would show you how I'm doing that. This is the back pattern piece. Luckily, with this pattern, I really didn't do much changing. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to draft this up to the next size, meaning I'm going to add this portion again up there, same with this portion over here, and even that tiny portion right there. I'm going to draft all that up. And then I measured the pattern piece for the front facing, and it's 2 3/4 inches wide at the shoulder. So that means that this bit right here is going to be 2 3/4, and I'm just going to keep that length and go all the way over here 2 3/4 as well. So that piece is going to look just like that with that increase in drafting up, and that's all it is. I'll show you when it's cut out. And this is what they look like. I didn't bother matching patterns or anything because this is the inside of the neck of the bodice. So this is going to get seamed up together here and seamed up with the front facings here and go right inside the neckline. And I'm going to go ahead and put that all together right now. The facing is all sewn in by machine this side, and it is now pinned in place on this side and ready to be stitched to the flap lining. But I will do that tomorrow because I do a Wednesday Zoom every week with some other costumers, and that will be perfect to do while I'm on the Zoom. So that's done-ish now, and I'm going to move on to the cuffs. So with the cuffs, it again would have been something that, like with the bag lining, it would have covered up the raw edge, but I am instead going to just use some single fold bias tape. So I'm actually going to do this all in one go. I have the cuff all pinned to the sleeve right now, but I am going to just take the bias tape and put it like basically so that the edge of this bias goes up kind of against the serging, and that way it can flip over and cover up all of the serging, and that won't stick out, and it'll just be turned on the inside, and I will sew that down by hand. So I've already reached, or rather gone past, the end of my sewing time for today, and the one other thing that I did besides sewing the cuffs and pinning the bias down on the inside to be hand stitched later was I did do a hand gathering stitch, or 2 hand gathering stitches on the skirt. So there are 2 sets of these. One goes partway around and then the other goes most of the way around because the very front is not actually gathered. So basically it goes from the opening to the front, and then the other one goes from the front all the way around to the opening again. This is the front where it's not gathered. So once I've done all that little hand finishing on the bodice tomorrow, I can go ahead and attach the skirt to the bodice. Okay, we're doing this in the mirror because it's just easier that way to get a full length. So I have the skirt attached to the bodice, but I'm not a fan of what's going on here. First off, it is definitely too low over here to the sides. I did take up the back, but I did not take up the sides or the front. I think this is just about right, and then it just dips. So this has to come up like, I think a good 1/2 inch right there. Like that's how too low the waistband is. The other thing is that this pattern calls for the very front right here of the skirt to be flat and then the gathering to start here, and I hate that. I think that looks atrocious. It doesn't help the fact that like the plaid is doing this weird dippy thing, but that's because this isn't a straight seam. So yeah, I think I'm just gonna gather it all the way around, especially because I'm pretty sure these side gathers right here are actually way more full than anywhere around the rest of the skirt because those are distributed evenly and these are all right here. So it's also just making things look very hippie. Now I'm not wearing the correct petticoat right now. I'm just literally wearing the skirt that I wore earlier, which is my Christmas skirt, under this dress, and that has my regular petticoat under this. This will be worn with like a fuller crinoline. So yeah, I'm going to reset the skirt to the bodice. I did get all of the facings sewn down, by the way, but this just isn't right. I think honestly it might even be a little bit long in the back, which I already took up. It's hard to tell, but the skirt is heavy and so it weighs, everything down and pulls everything down. Again, I think this part is right because this feels like it's right at my natural waist, but everywhere else I think is too long. So that is the weird part about adjusting patterns when you're sway back. If you remember, I added 1 inch here, half an inch here, and took away half an inch in the center back, and it's still, I mean, I didn't need to add the half inch here obviously, but it is still too long in the center back. So got some changes to make, but overall I am pleased with the look. I know it's dark in the mirror, but I do think that it's quite fun. I'll bet it's very spinny. I haven't actually tried yet. And the hem seems just about right. I mean, I haven't hemmed it yet, but I think the length seems just about right. So it should be relatively easy to just turn up the hem, I hope. Fingers crossed. So I am going to get to resetting this, and I'll check back in with you when that is done. Oh, I do also need a zipper. Right now I just have 1 pin at the waist. So that is the next thing once I reset this, is to put the zipper in. So I redid the entire skirt attaching and moved most of it up. That said, I still kind of feel like it's too long on this side back seam. I know you can't really see this because I'm in the mirror, but I still feel like it's a little long here. And then also it's giving me a visual appearance that it is too long here because of this green line. So I'm really tempted to take it up, but at the same time I know that I'm going to be wearing a belt right here, so it's like I don't know that it matters, and I'm honestly kind of tempted to just leave it as is, put the zipper in, because again I just got a pin in there, and then see, because I just want to like get this wearable, and a zipper and a hem means that it's wearable. Then I can do little tweaks like this. So, because yeah, it looks like it's dipping down. I think that might be what was going on here before as well, because there was like green coming to here and then green dipping down like that, and I think that was the issue. But it's looking better, but that was like a lot of work, and I just kind of lost all my sewing mojo by doing that, or by having to do that. So that is why I want to get that zipper in. The sides though, I am happy with the height now, having taken it up that half an inch. So I should be just fine putting the zipper in without doing any other funky tweaks. So yeah, oh, and I did gather this front now, and I think it's way better. I don't know, it just looked really weird before when it was flat. So that's where I'm at. I am going to put the zipper in. So the zipper is in, and I have added a belt. I tried on like a bunch of different belts and decided this was the one that I liked the best, but I gotta be honest with you, and I know this is super dark again, I gotta be honest with you, I am not loving it. I don't know why. I don't know if it's just like so much plaid. It's actually a little bit better now that I've pulled back my hair. I had my hair down before when I first put it on, and for some reason that made it way worse. So pulling back my hair helped a little, but I just feel like it's maybe that it's a lot. And I know one of the things that I'm not liking is the dolman sleeve, because when I lift my sleeve, I get all of this bulk added to my body. Dolman sleeves are just not kind for plus size ladies. And also, you know, you can't move. This is the extent of my movement because dolman sleeves are stupid. So I should have just like not done a dolman sleeve, but I wanted to try this pattern even though I knew I hate dolman sleeves. It is growing on me. I think it's getting better with the light and with my hair back. Like, I know that's stupid. So all it needs now is the hem. I'm not going to make the self fabric belt because it needs to be broken up. So I think this is the belt that I'm going to wear it with, this like faux alligator elasticy wide belt. And the nice thing is that this belt is actually so wide that you can't tell that the back is definitely still too long for me in the bodice. Like, I put on a slightly narrower belt and you could see the seam. So this belt's so wide that it doesn't matter. So yeah, it just needs hemming. I think the length is pretty close. I think I want it about 1 inch up. So I'm probably just gonna do half inch fold, and do that. I did notice that the side seams do seem to be a little bit shorter, which makes sense because it has been hanging for like a week at this point, and this side seam, like a seam, is going to prevent it from dropping, basically, even though it's on the bias. So yeah, I noticed that on less so on this side than on the other side, but yeah, it does seem to be a little bit shorter at the seams than elsewhere, so it might take a little bit for pinning and figuring, but that is what I'm going to attempt and does have nice spin and swish because of the taffeta lining. All right, I am going to go get to pinning my hem. So I finished the hem earlier today, which means the Christmas dress is done. I was honestly not happy with how this project was going, and by a little while I mean actually like right at the end. But I actually kind of love the outcome anyway. I think that so much of this project, and honestly a lot of the 1950s in general, comes from getting glammed up. And so when I did my hair, even though it's a 40s style because I didn't feel like setting my hair, when I did my hair and my makeup and I put on the jewelry and everything, it just made me feel so much better about this dress, and I felt like everything was so much more flattering than it was before. So at this point I am quite happy with this project. I can't wait to wear it for tea on Sunday. That said, I'm editing this video before we do tea, so you don't get any pictures of that. Sorry. But if you check out my Instagram, that's at Lady Rebecca Fashions, I will try to share pictures there. So anyway, I do hope that you enjoyed this video. If you don't mind a dolman sleeve, I do highly recommend this pattern because, wow, it needed so little alterations. So that was actually really awesome. If you liked this video, please go ahead and click the thumbs up icon. And if you'd like to see more videos like this from me, please go ahead and click subscribe and the little bell icon to be notified every time I post a video. I do post videos here on YouTube twice a week with my sewing vlogs like this on Tuesdays and my regular content out on Saturdays, but I post every day over on my Instagram. So as I mentioned before, please be sure to follow me on Instagram. That's at Lady Rebecca Fashions. And I do have a link to my Ko-fi account down below if you would like to support me and the channel further. I do also want to say a huge thank you and welcome to all of my new subscribers. Oh my gosh, just in the last week there has gotten to be so many of you, just while I was working on this dress in fact. So welcome. I am so excited to have you here. Anyway, that is it for me from this video. Have a wonderful week and I will see you very soon in my next video. Happy sewing!